Well, I think it's the irony of a conference at the Heights where the middle school head talks about contemplative spirit and silence. And of course, the lower school head talks about prayer because there's a lot of faith in the guardian angels down there. The topic, transmitting the faith, is one of obviously great interest to all of us. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI said that families where man learns to give and receive love. And I think he could have said the same thing about faith, the families where man learns to believe, learns to trust. So what I'm going to do this morning is to frame this topic, offer some clarifications, and then some practical suggestions as well. So first, what is faith? At the natural level, right, faith, to believe, is to know something to be true because of the authority of the source. Right? It's one of the ways we learn things. Right? We can learn things experientially, how the breeze feels or throwing a football feels. We can learn something empirically, we can learn something analytically, but we learn a lot through faith. If you think about it, most of our schooling is taken on faith. Right? If we were to double check and triple check everything every teacher and professor said, we'd probably still be in third or fourth grade because of the work that would take, even books that we read. So we take a lot of the information that we acquire because we trust the source. We believe that we're not going to be lied to, that this is both a competent and an honest source. And we do that with information. We even place our trust in sources that, may be doubtful. We can believe, ESPN with the scores. Right? When I look at ESPN, I can say, well, this team won, and I can say that with certainty. And I'm willing to argue that point if somebody says that the team didn't because I saw it on ESPN, even if I didn't see the game myself. Also, life choices. Where to go for dinner. We may ask somebody, go to this restaurant, it's a very good one. Even more important ones, take this job. Right? It'd be good for you. So we do a lot of learning by faith, natural faith. Supernatural faith, which is today's topic, is based on natural faith. So we can define it as adherence to God and belief in all that He has revealed. The first step is adherence to God, that is trusting. The first step is saying, I believe that God is a competent and honest source. I believe that He knows all there is to be known, and I believe that He speaks the truth. That's the first step. Once I do that, then it makes sense for me to believe everything that He reveals, that He tells me. It wouldn't make sense to believe some but not all. It would be like looking at the ESPN scores and saying, I don't believe this score. Like, well, why wouldn't you believe that one if you believe all the other ones? What basis do you have to doubt that particular score, other than perhaps the fact that it's your team that lost, right? It may be that you don't want to believe it, but there's no reasonable, rational way for you to say that score is less credible. And the same thing with what God has revealed. It may be that some things are harder to believe, but there's no rational way for me to say, well, I don't believe this because I find it difficult. I may have to work harder to live it, but I should believe it just the same. So what are the challenges in general to faith? Before I get into a more detailed study of different aspects of the faith. Well, obviously all the challenges come from our losing trust in either the competence or the honesty of the source. Now, this is not always the fault of the source. Sometimes it's the fault of the recipient, very often. Right? Mark Twain's famous statement that when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant, I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished as to how much the old man had learned in just 7 years. Right? The old man didn't change, right? I did. So sometimes, often, It's not that the source is not credible, it's that I'm just not willing, open to believe in what the source tells me. Trust can be lost and for more or less good reasons. Sometimes because we discover that the sources are flawed. This has happens with scientists, with teachers, happens with politicians, journalists. It can happen with parents, right? That we tell our children something and we're wrong, and our children thought, "Oh, geez, I thought my parents knew everything," right? I had a grandmother who always told me that you couldn't go to the water, you couldn't go to the pool or the ocean for 3 hours after eating lunch. And that's a long time, right? I mean, 3 hours. For a kid, it's like almost like a semi-death penalty, right? And, I think all she wanted was just to play cards with us. But anyhow, that's just my suspicion now that I'm looking back at it. But I do remember going one time to a friend's house, and we had lunch. And right after lunch, the kids said, "Well, let's go to the pool." I was thinking, "No, you guys, you don't want to do that because that's certain death, right?" And I looked at the kids' parents for support, and they said, "Sure." I can't believe these parents. They're going to be in jail. I mean, they don't understand. My friends went to the pool, and I tentatively went into the pool, and I survived. And I thought, well, my grandma wasn't right? Either she didn't know or she was lying. So we can lose faith in parents or grandparents. In the case of supernatural faith, sometimes I think we lose faith or trust in the church. It's not losing trust in God, it's losing trust in the church. Scandals in the church. How could I believe when this happened, right? Marketplace criticisms in the media, entertainment, corporate America, comments that are made, criticisms that are made. Our own criticisms, we have to be careful. When at home we may criticize a priest, we may criticize something that the church is doing. It's dangerous to place ourselves authoritatively above the Pope and the bishops and the priests and pastors, because if we do so, then we open the door for everyone else to do the same whenever they think that they should. But sometimes it's not that we lose trust in the church, we lose trust in God himself. The clearest example of this is when we're confronted with the so-called problem of evil, which has, it has a very simple syllogism to it, which is, I want something really badly. I ask God to grant me that thing. I believe that that thing is good because I can see with my reason that this is a good. And I could even argue in some cases it's indisputable good, right? Healing a young child, for instance, of a deadly disease. This is a good. Nobody could be against this. I pray for it, I ask for it, and then it doesn't happen. And therefore, either God doesn't exist, or he can't do anything about these things, or he just doesn't care. Right? That's the basic problem of evil. And confronted with that, some of us, because at a very practical level, can have our trust in God shaken. Right? I don't trust that he's taking care of me. I don't trust that he really cares. Sometimes the challenge is that we find the demands of the faith hard to believe. This is, faith and reason. When your children go to university and somebody from the platform criticizes the belief and talks about faith as being mythical, as being the opium of the masses, as being subjective. And a child without the right formation will listen to that and think, wow, I have finally been enlightened. This has been hidden to me by my parents, but now I see that is foolish to believe. It may be that child sees the faith as just a set of rules that have to be followed, without it being the relationship that it conveys. Sometimes we don't want to believe because of the personal cost of believing. C.S. Lewis, in his beautiful work, A Grief Observed, talks about this idea of how difficult it is sometimes to believe. And he says, for instance, you could trust that a rope is strong enough. If all you intend to do with that rope is, tie a suitcase together so that it travels safely, you could say, well, yeah, this is good enough. If you're going to use that rope to rappel down a cliff, then you have to make sure that the rope is strong enough, right? That the belief is strong enough. Sometimes our belief is weak. Yeah, we believe that it's good enough. I believe, we say. But we don't believe in God the same way that we believe that this rope, which I'm going to use to rappel down this cliff, is strong enough to hold my weight. There's a famous high wire artist, walker, Charles Blondin, who in 1860 decided that he was going to tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. That's quite a feat. Not only that, he decided he was going to do it with a man on his back, just to make it more exciting, because without that it was too simple, I guess. And before he did it, he asked the Prince of Wales, Edward Albert, who was 19 at the time, he was in the audience, asked him, do you believe that I can walk across Niagara Falls with a man on my back? And the prince told him, yes, I do. I believe. Will you be that man? The prince declined. I think I would have too. Certainly I would have. Do you believe I can do this? Sure. Are you willing to risk your life? Not sure. Sometimes our faith is shaken because we think that we're risking too much. I'm not willing to risk my happiness. I'm not willing to risk this which I'm pursuing. I'm not willing to risk whatever that may be. And what is it? Sometimes it could be pleasures. I know that this pleasure makes me somewhat happy temporarily. You tell me that if I give it up totally, I'll be even happier. I don't know. Or my comfort, or my routines. And as we get older, we develop these routines that we hold on to. For younger boys, for your sons, it's not going to be so much the routines. It's going to be the excitement of the pleasures. Right? Can you be happy if you don't drink? Can you be happy if you don't look at any pornography? Of course you will. You'll be much happier. Just got to let it go. Will you be happy if you don't seek comfort? If you seek sacrifice? Of course you will. But really, right, will you be that man? So that's challenges to believing in general. However, when talking about transferring the faith, that is transferring this trust in God, and trying to think how to do that, I think it helps to make some clarifications. When we talk about transferring the faith, I think we're talking about transferring 5 different aspects of the faith. And I'd like to talk about each one individually. The first one is transferring doctrine. That is just transferring theological statements about God that we believe to be true. Transferring prayers. This is what we call knowing the faith. Right? That I'm going to transfer this content to my children so that they know what the content is, so they know the faith. That's the first one. The second one is what I would call practical doctrine. The impact of the truths of faith in our behavior towards God. The sacraments, living the commandments, the liturgical requirements like fast and abstinence. This is what usually we call living your faith. Right? Not only knowing your faith, but living it. Third, morals. Right? The impact of the truths of faith on our behavior towards each other and towards others, towards things in general. How we treat others, how we treat nature, work, recreation. This is living as a Catholic, right? It's not only living the faith in terms of sacramental faith and the commandments, but living as a Catholic. The fourth one is a worldview. How our beliefs inform the way we approach the world and everything in it, right? Having a Christian view of the world. And the fifth one is intimacy with Christ, right? Our capacity to have a close, intimate relationship with Christ. This is really what faith is about. Trust necessarily implies this relationship. Each of these 5 aspects gets transferred differently, and each one has specific challenges. But fully transmitting the faith really means transmitting all 5, not just some of them. So let me go one by one. First is perhaps the most straightforward, which is transferring the doctrine, right? Knowing the faith. Transferring information to be known and memorized and understood, not just known and memorized, but understood as well. This is, teaching the faith, the prayers. I mean, teach you these prayers, teaching the commandments, teaching the creed, the catechism, right? The challenge is really that we often don't have the time to do it. And we do prayers when they're younger, but do we really go through the catechism, right? Do we have time, would we dedicate an hour a week every week to go through the truths of faith? It's hard to do, right? Unless you really plan it and stick to it. And that's why we use other institutions. We use parishes, we use schools, right? We use Catholic schools, Christian schools. And we trust that those schools are going to teach the faith. But I think all our experiences, then we could agree that we are fairly deficient in this area, right? That as Catholics, as Christians, you can grow to a mature age and really not know the faith that well, right? You think you do, and then you talk with somebody about it, and after the second question, you feel shaky, right? That you don't really have the arguments. I haven't thought that deeply about it. And the second challenge that there is that I see with our own students is that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. That is that you think you know the faith because you've been in religion classes several times, and therefore you say, well, I've heard all this. But you assume that what you heard when you were 7 is as deep as you need to go on that particular topic. And now you're 18, you think that you know it because you studied when you were 7, but you really don't know it well enough or deeply enough. So it takes humility on the part of the boy to say, I think I know this, but I don't. Right? I need to continue to be open to learning, right? Open to learning the faith. So what kind of things can we do about this? Well, one, I think it's really important to transmit the idea that the faith is reasonable. That the faith is reasonable. That the faith is not a set of rules. If we find ourselves answering when your son asks you, why is it this way? And we say, well, that's because that's the way it is, or that's what the church teaches. It's not a good answer, because then they begin to believe, well, this is just a set of rules that you got to follow. It's like, an oversight regulatory body, right? That some things are there, some regulations are there, and nobody knows why anymore, but they're still there, and they're enforced, and we have to obey them. So the faith is reasonable. One way to do that, I think, is just simply to admit that we don't know. Sometimes when they ask a question and we just don't know. And we say, that's a really good question. I don't have a good answer for you. I need to look that up. Maybe we look it up at it together. Right? Because I think that conveys the idea that, I'm still learning. Maybe a way to avoid the challenge of thinking that I know everything. I'm still learning. I'm going to be learning forever. And by the way, part of that is not that I've been lazy, it's that there's so much to know. It's such a rich body, such rich content, right? You never know enough. Right? It's like thinking about a classic work, War and Peace, and saying, well, I know everything about War and Peace. I don't know. It's such a great book. You probably could read it again and get something out of it. Right? There's too much in there to say that I have exhausted all there is to know about it. Together with this, I think in addition to manifesting that the faith is reasonable, allowing for wonder, the sense that there is no ceiling as to how much and how well you can know the faith. There's more to be known. Right? Again, it's such a rich body. There's more to be known. We can tap into it. And the beautiful thing is that you can think that you know everything when you're 10, and at 11 realize you don't know enough, and think that you know everything at 15, and the same thing at 25 and 35, 45, that you can always learn. There's no ceiling to how much you can learn. Practically speaking, we do seek the help of parishes and the schools, priests, so many priests. I mean, we're so fortunate, I think, in the Archdiocese of Washington and Diocese of Arlington, because we have so many really strong, good parishes with good priests who do a fantastic job teaching the faith in a very truthful and attractive way. Use them. Schools. Don't take the term Catholic or Christian as an umbrella statement that everything that is taught is orthodox and true. Now, the term Catholic school, the term Christian school is a brand. It doesn't always reflect a reality. Right? Go to the schools and ask, what is the religion curriculum? What's been taught? If you're going to go over the curriculum with your sons, that's the class that matters most. What are you learning? What are you doing in that class? Also because it's going to lead to great conversations, potentially. And then, teaching at home. Here's one aspect where technology has been, I think, really helpful, because there's so many websites, so many podcasts now that we can tap into that are really, really helpful. And I'm sure many of you already use some. So that's the first aspect, the content, the doctrine. The second one is the practical doctrine. They live in the faith, rituals and practices. Live in the commandments, live in the sacraments, liturgical requirements, things like fasting before communion, requirements during Lent, and so forth. What's the challenge here? Well, clearly we're not doing great, according to the polls. In the 1970s, 36% of those who were baptized and raised Catholic remained Catholic as adults, right? 36% is not great. In the 80s, it went down to 32%. In the 90s, down to 25%. In the 2000s, 21%. 2010s, 15%. So it's declining. Hopefully, it can start trending up at some point soon. But we're not doing great, right? Whatever we're doing, the vast majority of us are not doing it well enough to have the young generation not only know the faith but live it as they themselves grow older. And I think there are two common approaches that are misguided to practicing the faith. One I would put under the title of voluntarism. Voluntarism, partially, is thinking that it's up to me to live the faith well. Right? The faith is a set of precepts that I have to obey to be good. Right? If you ask a kid, how's your faith? He may say, oh, I haven't been good. I haven't been to Mass in 3 weeks. It's interesting. Right? Not going to Mass for 3 weeks means I'm not good, which means if I just do these things, that I am good. Right? If I'm checking these boxes, then I am living the faith. This can become very disheartening because as I begin to fail in some of the practices, I begin to think this is just impossible. Nobody can do this. It's such an unreasonable set of precepts and rules that nobody can abide by them. Nobody can obey them. G.K. Chesterton in Orthodoxy, I think it was, said that people didn't try the faith and felt it wanting. They found it difficult and left it untried. It's not that you try really to live the faith and you conclude that it doesn't give you what you need to live a happy life. It's that you find it difficult to live, and then you don't try it. There's also the sense that faith, living the faith, should make me happy. But if I approach it with a voluntaristic mentality, it won't, because it's a strain all along. I'm just grinding through the practice of the faith. I'm straining all the way through. And I may feel that I'm going to be saved, but I'm not sure that I'm really going to be happy in life. The other misguided approach is sentimentalism, which basically tells me that if it does not feel good, it cannot be good. That means that the quality of any religious experience is determined by how I feel about it. And you know that this is happening when you hear something like, well, I no longer go to church because I just don't feel the same when I go to church, right? That is, I used to feel pretty good about myself when I went to church. I stopped feeling pretty good about it, so therefore it doesn't work, right? I don't do it because it doesn't feel good, and the quality of the practice is determined by the sentiment that I have. This applies to praying, applies to the Mass, to church, to confession, faith in general. The interesting thing is that if voluntarism almost guarantees that I'm going to have a sad experience in the faith, I have to do it, even though I'm not happy about it. If voluntarism guarantees that, sentimentalism then tells me, hey, the faith is therefore not right, because it shouldn't be this way. The fact that you're never finding happiness means that this is not the way to go. There is another way to go. Maybe it works for somebody. That's the more contemporary approach. It works for some people, and good for them. But it's not universally true. And apparently it's not true for you, right, for your case. Sentimentalism also undermines moral judgment, because it means that I can't criticize somebody for immoral behavior because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And the morality of any behavior is determined not by objective criteria, but by how somebody feels about it. As long as you feel good about it, it is good. Insofar as you don't make many people miserable through it, then we have to figure that out, right? And work that out. What to do to transfer the living the faith, the practice of the doctrine? Well, obviously the example of our behavior, right? Getting to Mass, even if it is difficult. And I would say not just getting there, but trying to show the value of it, even externally. Dressing well for Mass. There was a former student who went to a large public university up in the Northeast. And he decided when he first got there that for Sunday Mass, he was going to dress up on coat and tie. And, that's what he did, Sunday morning Mass. And after a couple of weeks, people would ask him, like, where are you going? Right? Because first I thought he was going to a formal brunch with parents, and second would be, 2 weeks in a row, like, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to church. And you dress up? Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to meet God there, so I feel we'll dress up a little bit. A month into his freshman year, he had a group of about 10 people going to church with him and then getting brunch, right? It just became the thing to do. And the point is that it became attractive. Once other people saw, oh, you actually mean this. You're not just checking the box, you're actually invested in this, right? It means something to you. You're taking this seriously, right? It matters to you. It's also the example that we give as to how we approach the rules. Here's an example that I give the students. in this to make this point. Just imagine, I tell the seniors, just imagine that you meet the girl of your dreams. She's beautiful, she's caring, she's attentive, she understands you, she supports you. She cooks a mean steak with mashed potatoes. Because if you're 18, that really matters, right? Everything you could imagine, right? But you think that it's not going to work out. And you think it's not going to work out because you doubt this is too good to be true. So you figure it's not going to happen. Like this doesn't happen in real life. And then you get a phone call from her older brother. And he says, we've been talking about you and our sister. And that worries you a little bit. He says, and we've decided that you are ideal for our sister. We want to help you make sure that this works out. So I'm going to give you some pointers. Here's what you got to do. Every Sunday, you have to take her on a walk. She loves walks. We're going to send you 15 trails around town that you could use. No less than an hour, could be a couple hours, doesn't have to be more than that. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's raining or snow, like she loves it regardless. Right, just bring appropriate gear. There are 4 days during the year that are special to her. And you not only have to take her on a walk, you have to buy her 7 red roses. Not 6, not 8, 7, not yellow or white, red. We'll send you flower shops around so you can get those roses. And you have to call her every day, but not between 6:30 and 8, because that's family time. So before 6:30, after 8, not after 10:30 p.m., but call her every day. And just try to have a good conversation, but just call her regardless, even if you're tired, even if you don't feel like talking, if you don't have anything to say, even if you're just grunting your way through the conversation, that's all right. Just get on the phone, right? Every day. If you do that, she'll love it. Okay, if you hang up the phone and say, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own way, like every Sunday. Like, are you kidding me? Right? Roses, are you kidding me? Right? If you do that, I would say it's not that the demands are unreasonable. It's that your love is actually short. You actually don't care. You can't say it's crazy to do that. It's that you don't care. Because if you do care, when you hang up that phone, you're incredibly happy. Like, now I know. Now I know. Like, I can do that. I love directions like that. And I know that the point is to do much more than that. But this is the foundation. And I'm never going to miss this. An example of loyalty as well. Example of loyalty, that means that I'm committed to it, to the faith, regardless of how I feel about it. One time going to the Easter Vigil Mass, I met a friend of mine who was there by himself, and I was surprised to see him there. And I was surprised to see him there because this man was an atheist. And after Mass, I went to him and said, what are you doing here? Not very ecumenical, I understand, but maybe not the best approach, but what are you doing here? This is the longest liturgy there is. And you came by yourself. Like, where's your family? I said, well, wife is with one of the boys, visiting a college. The other one is still in the school. Third one is at a tournament out of town, so I'm home alone. And you came. And he said, yes. I committed myself, when I got married, to my wife, who's Catholic, that I would go to Mass every Sunday and every feast day. So here I am. That's loyalty. He could have skipped that one, right? He could have said, hey, the kids are not around, right? No one is around. He didn't. He did become Catholic a couple of years later. Thirdly, morals. How to relate to others and to the world. Life of virtue, right? Moral choices. Choices where I have to choose a good, right? Decide what the good is and choose it. Many choices that we make are frankly neutral, right? Whether I drink an IPA or a lager, that's neutral, right? Whatever I feel like drinking at that point, I guess. Whether I plagiarize a document or not, that's not neutral. Whether I fulfill an agreement or not, that's not neutral, that there is a clear good and evil. What are the challenges here? Well, the challenge, I think, is that I make moral choices that distance me from the faith. Stop going to church because it's inconvenient, because I'm in college, because no one is going. I stop going, right? Either because they distance me from the faith, or because I make moral choices that are incompatible with the faith. I am 16 and I'm doing weed, and I go to confession, and the priest tells me to give it up, and I do it again, and I go to confession, tells me to give it up, and then I don't go to confession, and then I don't go to communion, and then I begin to think, well, maybe this faith thing is unreasonable, right? It's unreasonable. If it doesn't meet me halfway, what can I do, right? So that's the challenge, and it comes in forms of pleasure, in forms of pride, attachment to things, whatever it might be. So, what are some of the suggestions here? One is to clarify that the faith actually explains reality. It does not create reality. Just like the laws of physics do not create reality, they explain it. Right? When we teach the law of gravity, the student can say, oh, why do you do that? I can no longer fly. Right? Until you taught me this law, I was able to fly freely. Like, no, kid. Right? Before you knew this, you may have fallen off the roof and killed yourself. Right? I did not create the law of gravity. I am only explaining to you how that works. Moral law is like the law of gravity. It's the law of relationships. This is how you find happiness relating to others. This is how you find happiness relating to the world. This is how you find happiness relating to God. It doesn't create the happiness. It just explains why, if you follow this way, you find yourself happy. Just like gravity explains how if you follow it, you find yourself able to do a lot more in the world than otherwise. How to manifest this? Well, the example of our own choices, right? Showing detachment from our own things. People matter more. Father Malcolm Kennedy, who was the original chaplain here at the Heights, and at one point he fell in love with gardening. And that's where the garden party here at the Heights came from, because he fell in love with gardening and said, geez, we've got to invite people to come over and look at my flowers. And, after a while that became, 600 people coming over to look at, not really the flowers, but just spend time together, but it's still the garden party. So he planted this rose bush little gardening by the middle school. And a faculty member, who's no longer here, not because of this event, but he retired many years ago. A faculty member decided to have some students on detention on a Saturday morning, and he wanted to give them something to do. And he thought a good thing to do to help Father Malcolm was to weed the garden. So they did that with incredible efficiency and gusto, to the point that they took everything out, weeds and roses and everything. And Father Malcolm came back on Monday morning to find a depleted dirt patch, and quickly found out what had happened, and went to this faculty member who was hiding because he knew this is not going to be good. And Father Malcolm grabbed him by the shoulders and said, if I didn't love you more than I love my roses, I would kill you. And the faculty member was very grateful that he indeed loved him more than the roses, right? But we love people, even when they're a great inconvenience to us, even when they wrong us, even when we have a right to be mad. I was talking to a recent alumnus last week who was in college, and he was telling me about one of his friends in the school who wronged him terribly. This so-called friend was disloyal, and there's something around his back that just really wasn't good. And after a week, this alumnus decided, I have to go to him because they hadn't talked. I have to go to him and tell him, I forgive you. I forgive you and I love you. We're good to go. And he did. And he said it was really hard because I'm fighting my anger against him. I'm fighting my hatred towards him. But I know this is the right thing to do. He said, no, I can't trust him anymore. That's what happens with trust. So that friendship is not going to be recovered. But I just had to at least build that bridge. To know that we're willing to give up simple pleasures when we have to. A glass of wine, a show, a routine, that we're willing to give those up. That we're willing to serve others, acts of service at home. That we filter what we hear in the outside world. Immoral behavior that our sons become aware of is a great opportunity to teach them what is right and what is wrong. Don't be afraid of your children encountering immorality. You try to protect them, but don't be afraid of that, because they are going to have to live in an immoral culture. And they have to live in an immoral culture, they themselves being moral. Worldview. How I view the world and my role in it. Again, the challenge that I see the faith as a negative imposition of rigid rules, that sometimes as Catholics we can be driven by fear of hell. The typical religion class question, is this mortal when I do this sin? How bad is that, right? It means that you're already thinking about the line, like, well, how much fun can I have before I cross that line, right? Because I don't want to cross that line too much. We know that we're supposed to relate to God. It's a relationship. But what kind of relationship is that, right? A criminal has a relationship with a police officer. But that's not a great relationship, right? What is the relationship with God? So transferring this worldview, that you're a child of God, that you're optimistic, cheerful, that He has your back, that He's going to protect you. That faith is a love story. That Christianity is about the fact that God loves us. And we have our whole lives to try to figure out how to love Him back. It's a love story. And it's an adventure. The young are not going to be attracted to rules and imitating rules, but they'll be attracted to adventure. They'll be attracted to our lives when they see that we're actually pursuing something really great. And something really great is this beautiful relationship. And that there's ups and downs, but that there's the happiness of the pursuit. Right? Fear of hell is not a good philosophy. We need to talk about our gratitude in natural ways. Gratitude for the faith. How thankful I am that I have faith, that I was baptized, right? That God is with us. We celebrate liturgical feast days, right? Family rituals. And I think, very practically speaking, that we create microcultures by having other adults around our children who have the same worldview. Because as your children go from being little kids to teenagers, they're going to push you away. And you can't take it personally, right? But they're going to push you away. They're going to want to find their own truth. And there is where it really helps to have other people in their lives who are your proxies, right? Who believe the same things that you believe. Finally, intimacy with God, which is the final aspect and the most important. Knowing the doctrine matters because it is a practical way for us to learn about God, with whom we want to have an intimate relationship. Living the doctrine matters because it is our way to tell God, who has created us and the world around us, that we love him, and we do that as a way to grow in our relationship with him. Morals obviously matter because they're a way for us to interact with others and the whole of creation the right way, in a way that is respectful to the gifts and attractive to those around us. The worldview matters because it helps us understand who we are in relation to him and how we ought to relate in a genuine, intimate relationship with him. But intimacy, which is the most important aspect of transmitting the faith to our children, is the one that I'm going to leave to Andy and Colin to discuss. Thank you.